The topic that we are discussing today is distortions in history. Now, although the canvas is very large as far as the topic is concerned, because education starts from school, goes up to college level and university level. For the sake of brevity and for the sake of keeping it short, I will focus only on the school portion. Because what happens is, in India, the general trend is that from 6th class onwards, history is taught as a separate subject up to 10th class. Then after 10th, students switch over to different streams. Some go into science, others into commerce, and a very small fraction that opts for arts, even smaller portion opts for history as a subject over there. So primarily, the history that shapes the overall mental space of people who have studied in India through Indian education system, that spans from 6th class to 10th class. I try to focus on that portion only. Now, why is it even important? Because I am a physics teacher and science has been my passion. And I used to think that science and maths are the only two subjects which are required if any society has to make any sort of progress. And since I had very bad memories regarding my social studies and especially my history, I was very biased against it and used to think that teaching history is an absolute waste of time of students as well as teachers, and it should not be done. And I remained in this warped worldview for a very long time, or a very long portion of my life. And it was just by chance that I started studying history. And I'll just share one photograph with you. Just let me locate the photograph. Here it is. Here is the photograph. You can see some students, some of them are raising their hands. I think it is visible to all of you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, fine. I was taking a regular class. I was teaching physics over here. And on that particular day, one student was having his birthday. His name was Aryan. So I just started asking the meaning of Aryan. Of course, he did not know. And then the discussion wandered, and I asked them, how many of you think that there was an Aryan invasion into our country? And you can see the number of people who are raising their number of students who rose their hands. Now, this was despite the fact that when they were studying, there was no such clear-cut topic called Aryan invasion theory in their history books. Yet, there was a substantial number of students who thought that Aryan invasion theory was real. And there was a group of people who called themselves Aryans. They invaded India and perpetrated a large number of atrocities, pushed the indigenous population southwards. So there is this binary of Aryans and Dravidians. Till that time, I was, as I already told you, that I've been teaching physics and had no concern with history. Then there was another second connected incident. That incident was that a student of mine, a very brilliant student, he was of a dark complexion. And as usually happens, people in our country having a dark complexion have an inferiority complex. That is what he was having. And he said one sentence. He said that, sir, we are Aryans and still I am so dark, I don't know why. So that again struck me. I said, Abhinav, why are you saying that you are an Aryan? How do you know you are an Aryan? His answer was, कि सर मुझे पता नहीं क्यों है, लेकिन ये मुझे पता है कि हम आर्यंस की संतान हैं. So that set me thinking that there is something wrong either with me or with these students. And when I was coming downstairs from my office, there was this book of this shop of textbooks. I went over there and bought the entire bunch of history books from 6th class to 10th class. The reason was that since I am a teacher, I have a firm belief that if somebody believes in something and he does not know the source of that belief, then generally he has taken up that concept from his education. So I decided that, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach to the bottom of this mystery and try to find out whether I am wrong or these students are wrong. I took those books and I started marking the portions which I thought do not match with the perception of history that I have. And after marking all of those, I decided to check it out. And for every portion, I started writing an application under the Right to Information Act. So I wrote those applications to NCERT in Delhi. And these were about 110 applications which I sent to them. And in all those applications, my request was that this is a portion at so and so page, which our students are learning. Kindly share the original documents from which you have taken this particular excerpt. Provide us certified copies. And if the original was not in English or Hindi, then what is the translation that you have used over here? And name of the officials who vetted and decided to put these texts in the textbooks. I received 110 replies from NCERT, and all the replies were a standard template that the department does not have any documents to substantiate their claims. Now, this was way back in 2012. That was an indication that there is something wrong, that there is something very fishy going on here. And then I decided that, okay, what I'll do is, whatever I can do, I'll try to verify whether it is a deliberate attempt to distort history or I am being a conspiracy theorist. And fortunately, we are living in this internet age in which a large number of books are available online. So I started reading those books, and that was when I started finding out that the books are teaching wrong history. So once I was sure of that, now I had to decide that if a wrong history is being taught, then whether it is by design or it is an accident, because errors are possible. We are all humans, so maybe these are errors. And just like an average Sarkari Babu in India, the people who were writing history books, they were very callous and they just published whatever they felt like. Now, in physics, in science, there is a very simple rule of studying the errors. That since we know every measurement is going to have errors, suppose I have to measure the length of this remote control in my hand. I'll take a measuring tape, measure its length. And I'll take maybe 5 readings, 10 readings, 20 readings, and note all those down. And then I will find out average of all those readings. That average will be very close to the true result, because when we are making a measurement, the errors can be on either side. It can be positive also, it can be negative also. If it is a 10 centimeter long object, somebody might measure it to be 10.1 centimeters. Someone might measure it to be 9.9 centimeters. So when we take all those averages, the value that we get is known as true value or the closest true value. And then there is this very funny incident which is in my memory. We were watching a cricket match and Sachin Tendulkar was playing and the umpire declared him LBW. Although when replays were seen, he was not actually out. Now, what happened was when he was declared out, Sachin Tendulkar, being a gentleman, just left the ground to the pavilion. And the commentators, one was Sunil Gavaskar, I don't remember the other gentleman. Who was that? So Gavaskar said something very beautiful. He said that Sachin Tendulkar is a very good gentleman. And there is one more additional thing, that when you play as a batsman and you have a fairly long career, sometimes the umpire will declare you out when you are not out. And the reverse is also true. When sometimes you're actually out, you will be given not out. So over a considerably long career, both kind of errors cancel out each other and you get a fair career out of all those games. That is how I used to look at it. But then I observed that all the errors which I was finding out in these history books were not random errors. It was not that one was positive, other was negative. All of them were pointing in one particular direction. That direction was that India has been a bad country. It has had a very bad religion. It has had very bad traditions. The ancient Indian society was plagued with all kinds of evils. It mistreated women. It mistreated the so-called lower castes. It perpetrated a lot of atrocities on one section, perpetrated a lot of atrocities on the other. And now I have a standing open challenge for anyone that out of these 10 history books which are currently in circulation, if anyone can show me one sentence, just one sentence, which throws a positive light on Indian traditions, I'll be giving him 1 million rupees from my pocket. And it has not been claimed so far. And it won't be. This tells you that it is a deliberate attempt to malign Indian traditions. There may be any Indian traditions, and especially Hindu dharma. That is what they are doing. And I'll share just one glimpse with you. When our children go to schools, when history is introduced in class 6, the general age of a child is 12 or 13 years. What he has to go through is, just let me try to share it with you. This is a portion of my book which Arunaji was mentioning. I have put here some excerpts on page number 55 of class 6. What are they saying? However, some people, such as those who were regarded as Shudras by the priests, were excluded from many rituals. Then on next page, page 56, often women were also grouped with Shudras. Both women and Shudras were not allowed to study the Vedas. Then on page 61, however, women, dasas and kamkas could not participate in these assemblies. They're talking about some assemblies which used to take place. Then on page number 72 of same class 6 book, generally women were not allowed to study Vedas and they had to follow the ashrams chosen by their husbands. Then on page number 108, the man who is regarded as low by the Brahmin, they're talking of lower castes. Then page number 128, the Puranas were written in simple Sanskrit verse and were meant to be heard by everybody, including women and Shudras who were not allowed to study the Vedas. Then on page 143, historians who have tried to understand these developments suggest that there were at least two processes at work. One was process of disseminating Brahmanical ideas. This is exemplified by the composition, compilation and preservation of Puranic texts in simple Sanskrit verses, explicitly meant to be accessible to women and Shudras who were generally excluded from Vedic learning. Then on page 105, generally they were written in simple Sanskrit verse and were meant to be read aloud to everybody, including women and Shudras who were not who did not have access to Vedic learning. Now try to imagine the mental state of that child, and especially if the child is a girl. By the time she will finish this book of class 6th, she will be thoroughly disgusted by Hinduism, by its traditions. And that is exactly what they are trying to do. And after this has been done, then comes the final blow. What is that? Then they move on to page number 109 of the same book. What do they say there? Here are a few verses from the Bible, the holy book that contains the teachings of Christ. Now remember, Bible is a holy book, but the same term holy has not been used with any Hindu text, not with Vedas, not with Purans, not with Mahabharata, not with Ramayana. Then, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. And then, in that same class 6 textbook, around 1400 years, Prophet Muhammad introduced a new religion, Islam, in Arabia. Like Christianity, Islam was a religion that laid stress on the equality and unity of all before Allah, the one supreme God. Here is a verse from Quran, the sacred textbook of Islam, the sacred book of Islam. For Muslim men and women, for believing men and women, for devout men and women, for true men and women, for men and women who are patient and constant, for men and women who humble themselves, for men and women who give in charity, for men and women who fast, for men and women who guard their chastity, and for men and women who engage much in Allah's remembrance. For them, Allah has prepared forgiveness and great reward. Now, look at the amount of effort that has been put, the amount of insidious trick that has been used. Just cherry pick a single verse from Quran which talks about equality of men and women and teach it. That is how our students are being brainwashed by the history books which are currently in circulation, and they have been in circulation since 2005. This one example should be sufficient to tell you what kind of toxins are present over there. But what is more painful is, in 2002-2003, some history books were changed during the Vajpayee regime when NDA-1 was in power. That was only for one academic year. Then in 2004, the regime changed. UPA-1 came into power. And in 2005, they wrote these textbooks from which I am quoting. And since 2005-2006, today in 2022, for 17 years, these books are in circulation. And for 8 years, we have a government who was supposed to take care of these toxins. But it has not been done. And this is causing immense damage to the social fabric of our country. You can just imagine the plight of these students who will be coming out reading these books. This is not only, this is just one aspect. What they're doing is far, far more insidious. I'll share one example with you. Okay, now just take a look at this. This I have picked up from one page of NCERT. This is, oh sorry, class 7th, page number 10. What are they saying? In 1318, the poet Amir Khusro noted that there was, now after this comes the quote, a different language in every region of this land. Sindhi, Lahori, Kashmiri, Dwarsamudri, Telangani, Gujri, Malabari, Gauri, Awadhi, and Hindavi in the area around Delhi. This is italicized part, which is the quote. Then the quote is broken. Then NCERT authors themselves write. Amir Khusro went on to explain that in contrast to these languages, there was Sanskrit, which did not belong to any region. It was an old language, and then inverted commas start. Common people do not know it, only the Brahmins do. Now, this is what they are teaching us. What is the fact? Now, since I am not a historian, I was not very well conversant with what Amir Khusro had done. So I tried to find out the book in which Amir Khusro had written this particular portion. And as I already told you that since we are living in internet era, we can find a lot of things. This is what he was actually saying. As I was born in Hind, I may be allowed to say a word respecting its languages. There is at this time in every province a language peculiar to itself and not borrowed from any other. Try to compare the two things. The original one is on the left and the distorted one is on the right. He starts by saying, as I was born in Hind, which tells you he's talking about India, talking about Hind, Hindustan. And now look at what they are saying. A different language in every region of this land. Hind has been purposefully omitted because the entire narrative that they're trying to peddle is that India was never a united entity. These were different places who used to fight on basis of their language, on basis of their region. And it was only Britishers who created just a single entity in 1947. Although Amir Khusro, if you look at this quote, Amir Khusro actually is just countering this entire narrative by his own quotation. Then he further says, okay, just a minute. Now the portion which they have given in italics, a different language, that portion is okay. Then what Amir Khusro actually says, where they've cut off his narrative, he again reiterates, these are all languages of Hind, which from ancient times have been applied. See how much the mentality of student would have changed by reading just these two sentences. What happens is that when you know that you belong to a very old country, that tells you that you have very robust and healthy traditions. And that instills confidence in students. And that is exactly what NCERT is trying to rob from the students. Anyway, further, what does he say about Sanskrit? What they have said is, Amir Khusro went on to explain that in contrast to the languages, these languages, there was Sanskrit which did not belong to any region. Because they are trying to create that narrative that Aryans invaded and they brought Sanskrit. Now, what is Amir Khusro saying? But there is another language more select than others, which all the Brahmins use. Its name from of old is Sanskrit. By twist of a few words, they've just inverted the entire meaning of the statement. And ironically, this translation which I'm quoting on left, this translation has been provided to us by colonial masters. There were two very famous historians by the name of Eliot and Dawson. What they had done was they translated the Muslim chronicles into English. And they've produced these 8 volumes. The title is History of India as told by its own historians. And from there, I picked this up and compared it with what NCERT is right now peddling to us. So they are not only attacking the social caste lines, the social fault lines, I should say. They are also creating linguistic fault lines which did not existed, and in fact, which could have been a binding glue for our society, is being portrayed as a divisive force. Okay, then further. how they're using applied psychology, the tricks of propaganda. This is the next page. Look at the right side column. Do you remember what Amir Khusro had to say regarding Sanskrit, knowledge, and Brahmans? Now, why are they doing this? That will be clear when you look at what they are teaching our students. It was during this period that important changes occurred in what we call Hinduism today. These included the worship of new deities, the construction of temples by royalty, and the growing importance of Brahmins, the priests, as dominant groups in society. Their knowledge of Sanskrit texts earned the Brahmins a lot of respect in society. And then they are saying, do you remember what Amir Khusro had to say regarding Sanskrit, knowledge, and Brahmins? The picture has been completed of wily Brahmins imposing Sanskrit. And I'll come back to this point that their knowledge of Sanskrit texts earned Brahmins a lot of respect in society. What they're trying to say is that Brahmins did not have any positive traits in their character for which they were respected. They were just being respected because they knew Sanskrit. Okay, now, how are they depicting Muslims? I just try to find it out and share it with you. Yes, here it is. Okay, now see here. When it comes to Muslims, the Muslim community survived on agriculture and trade, as well as alms tax, zakat. In addition, the Muslims organized okay, just a minute. Let me find that exact quote where it is. Yes, here it is. When they're talking about Muslims, how they portrayed, for more than 7 centuries, people of various creeds, classes, and social backgrounds have expressed their devotion at the dargahs of the 5 great Chishti saints. Remember, the term great or saints is never used for Hindus or Brahmins throughout the textbooks. Amongst these, the most revered shrine is that of Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti, known as Garib Nawaz. The earliest textual reference to Khwaja Moinuddin Dargah date to 14th century. It was evidently popular because of the austerity and piety of its sheikh, the greatness of his spiritual successors, and the patronage of royal visitors. Now that will give you the contrast. That now Moinuddin Chishti was actually a rapist of his time. He was a brigand of his times, whom we falsely have been doing. And look at the terminology that is being associated. He was popular because of his austerity and piety. Brahmins did not possess this quality. Brahmins were respected because of their knowledge of Sanskrit texts. But this person, who is a recorded rapist in history, he was popular because of austerity and piety. That is the kind of portrayal of history which our students are day in and day out going through. I can keep on quoting examples. Okay, I'll just give you one more example for this. Okay, here we are. This is about a so-called social reformer, Pandita Ramabai. What are they teaching our students? Pandita Ramabai, a great scholar of Sanskrit, felt that Hinduism was oppressive towards women. and wrote a book about the miserable lives of upper caste Hindu women. She founded a widows' home at Pune to provide shelter to widows who had been treated badly by their husbands' relatives. Here, women were trained so that they could support themselves economically. And needless to say, all this more than alarmed the Orthodox. For instance, many Hindu nationalists felt that Hindu women were adopting Western ways. Now, why is it wrong? And in CDS, I'll share it with you. Now, this Pandita Ramabai, this should give you some example that there was this particular trust which was created for Ramabai. Look at the board of managers. The president is Reverend E. Winchester. All the vice presidents are reverends. So that gives you a fair idea that she was actually a Christian stooge who is being taught over here as a social reformer. And now she has had a very painful story. She belonged to the family of a very poor Brahmin. That Brahmin had determined that he is going to teach the classical Hindu texts to all his students, all his children. And therefore, he started teaching Ramabai, and Ramabai also had a younger brother, about 1 or 2 years younger to her. And both of them started learning Sanskrit and scriptures from their father. By the time she became 14 years of age, her parents died in extreme poverty. That was a very sad part of her story. But by that time, she had very good knowledge of Sanskrit and some knowledge of Sanskrit texts, as much a 14-year could have had at that time. She went to Kashi, and the Brahmins were very happy to see such a young girl well versed in Sanskrit. Those Brahmins gave her the title of Pandita, and that is why she was called Pandita Ramabai. And then she came to Maharashtra. In those days, Pune was the de facto capital of Maharashtra, or was a cultural center over there. She and her brother, they started exhibiting their knowledge of Sanskrit and Sanskrit texts. And as a result, the well-off families of Pune welcomed them with open arms, and they decided to support financially this girl. Now what happened was that her brother died, so now she was left alone, and she was just about 17, 18 years of age. Then she got married to an advocate. By the time she was about 19 years of age. And by the time she was 20, she became a widow. So one after another, she was suffering from some social calamity, some family problem. Then now she was a widow, she was pregnant, she had a daughter. What she did, she started conducting a tour of Pune and the surrounding areas, where she would go and preach. And what was the thrust? That Hindu girls should study, they should not be bound in their houses, and they should pursue studies along with boys. For that, she used to quote Hindu scriptures. And the entire Brahmin fraternity of Maharashtra welcomed her. They arranged her travels, they arranged her boarding and lodging, all these things were done. Why I'm telling you all this is that she had a tragic life, but how was society responding? Society was always extending a helping hand to her. They were glad that here we have a girl who is well versed in Sanskrit and she must be promoted. But how is she being depicted? Needless to say, all this more than alarmed the Orthodox. For instance, many Hindu nationalists felt that Hindu women were adopting Western ways. This is a way to portray the entire Hindu society in a regressive mode, although the truth is entirely opposite to this. Now, anyway, then what happened was she fell into the trap of missionaries. They took her to England. They provided her an all expenses paid tour of England, where she was baptized. She was given very handsome money, and then she came back. And that is how this association was formed. And when he came over here, when she was over there, that is what she is saying. I believe that those who, you can just go through it, I don't have to go into details. What she is saying is, now the same woman who was saying that the present plight of Hindu women is because due to Muslim invaders, the girls have to stay indoors, and Hindu scriptures talk about liberation of women. Now she changed her tone entirely. She started preaching that Hinduism is regressive and Christianity is forward looking. Okay. I can keep on quoting such examples, but I think that gives you a fair idea that what kind of narrative is being pushed down the throats of our students. And you can, if we look at today's landscape, maybe you must have heard names like Arundhati Roy, Teesta Setalwad, Cedric Prakash. All these names, the same modus operandi is still working. That is still operational. What was being done 120 years ago using Ramabai, that is being done right now also. Same kind of mechanism is being used. Those people who don't have affinity, those who don't have any respect for our traditions, our religion, our dharma, they are being propped up by Western powers, by vested powers, I should say, not only Western powers, and they are being depicted as social reformers, not only by political system and mass media, but through the education system also. That is how thoroughly the system has been compromised during these years. And one more example, I think, should be sufficient to give you overall view. Here it is. Now I move to class 7th. See what they're doing. Take the term Hindustan, for example. Today we understand it as India, the modern nation state. When the term was used in the 13th century by Neeraj Atri, a chronicler who wrote in Persian, he meant the areas of Punjab, Haryana and lands between the Ganga and Yamuna. He used the term in a political sense for lands that were a part of dominions of Delhi Sultan. The areas included in this term shifted with the extent of Sultanate, but the term never included South India within it. So, जो मैंने आपसे पहले कहा कि वो नॉर्थ साउथ डिवाइड जो क्रिएट हो रही है, वो सिर्फ पॉलिटिशियंस नहीं कर रहे, वो हमारे यहाँ पर जो टेक्स्ट बुक्स हैं उनके थ्रू की जा रही है. अब इसमें वो कह रहे हैं कि जो हिंदुस्तान है उसमें कभी भी साउथ इंडिया इंक्लूडेड नहीं था. ये उनके नॉर्थ साउथ डिवाइड के नैरेटिव को सूट करता है. लेकिन अब आप याद कीजिए, जो मैंने आपको 7th क्लास वाला अमीर खुसरो वाला कोट दिखाया था, अगर उसी को पूरा कोट कर दिया जाता तो ये इनका नैरेटिव बन नहीं सकता था. इसलिए उसे वहां से हटाया जाता है और इस तरह से उसे प्रेजेंट किया जाता है. लेकिन वो सिर्फ एक अकेला एविडेंस नहीं है जो हमें ये बताता है कि वी ऑलवेज वर अ यूनाइटेड कंट्री. जितने ट्रैवलर्स हमारे देश में आ रहे हैं, जिन्होंने भी कंसिडरेबल कॉर्पस छोड़ा है अपने ट्रैवलों का, उनमें से मैं आपके साथ एक शेयर कर लेता हूं. आज से लगभग 1000 साल पहले जब महमूद गजनवी ने हमला किया था, तो उसके साथ उसका एक क्रॉनिकलर था अल-बिरूनी. उसने एक किताब लिखी है विच इज नोन एज किताबुल हिंद. वो उसमें क्या बताता है, हियर इट इज. एज टू द ओरोग्राफिक कॉन्फ़िगरेशन, सारा पढ़ने की आपको आवश्यकता नहीं है, बस नीचे जो मैंने रेड में हाईलाइट किया उसी से काम चल जाएगा. One of these plains is India, limited in the south by the above mentioned Indian Ocean, and on all the 3 other sides by the lofty mountains, the water of which flow down to it. तो इतने क्लियर कट एविडेंस है हमारे पास, और ये ऐसा भी नहीं है कि कोई VHP वालों ने बनाया, कोई संघी ने बनाए हैं, क्योंकि फिर तो हमें अल-बिरूनी को भी संघी मानना पड़ेगा कि राष्ट्रीय स्वयंसेवक संघ ने कोई टाइम ट्रेवल करके पास्ट में गए और उन्होंने इस तरह की किताबें लिखी हैं. और जो ट्रांसलेशन है वो एक जर्मन ने किया हुआ, अल्बर्ट सचाउ नाम है जिन्होंने ट्रांसलेशन किया. और नॉट ओनली दैट, अब आगे फिर जो वो इसे खत्म करता है, द साउदर्न फ्रंटियर ऑफ इंडिया इज फॉर्म्ड बाय द साउदर्न ओशन. ओके, तो व्हाट आई डू इज मैं यहाँ पर रुकता हूँ. आई थिंक आई हैव गिवन यू सफिशिएंट आइडिया कि किस तरह से जो नैरेटिव है उसे डिस्टॉर्ट किया जा रहा है. यदि आपने मुझे बहुत ध्यान से सुना उसके लिए बहुत धन्यवाद. इफ यू हैव एनी क्वेश्चंस आई विल बी ग्लैड टू आंसर.